Hi there, this is Scott Armstrong from Limitless, and welcome to our third podcast in our series of high performance habitudes. Still not sure what a habitude is? Well, it's a combination of an attitude that you bring to a specific aspect of your life, like work, recreation, family, and the habits that come from that attitude, how you embrace that, whether they be positive and expansive or negative and contracting. Today, what we're talking about is the power of your posse, the power of the people that you hang with, the power of the people and their influences on what you choose to engage, ignore, grow, contract in your life. So take a moment and think about, where are the people in your life that you hang with the most, the top 5? And, for the moment we can say, yes, include your partner, but get outside of the house. Who outside of the house do really influences your life that you hang with, that when you get a chance you connect? Because the law of averages, the law of life says your life is going to be somewhere in the middle of those 5. And of course, at the end of our 80 years or 90 years, whatever we want or whatever we get, we don't get to choose, but whatever we get, you want to have a life that's as outstanding as possible. So you want to pay attention to the folks you hang with. Now, posses, we all have them, whether they're informal or formalized. The question about the value of a posse, it's around what bonds that posse together. So, for example, if you have some friends from high school, university days, old, athletic buddies and stuff like that, your posse connection might be on something that's reminiscing, historical, and comforting, which is good, but does it have anything going forward in growth? Another posse could be around the water cooler or on internet, platforms, social engagements. And, again, is that a positive thing or a negative thing? Because the more you hang around either of those, the more you're... So taking a look at the people, the 5 people that you hang around with the most. And if you have to go through them, just sort of thinking about them now, if you've got a chance just to write some first names down on a piece of paper, who's raising your game? And who's pulling you back? Because with all relationships, there's an ebb and flow of give and take. And you have to have that both ways for it to be healthy for both people. But there's some in your posse who are same, always doing the same kinds of stuff, never changing up, negative in nature. Those are calling cards for going, you know what? Maybe I've outgrown this relationship. And that's where a lot of people have challenges because, you've invested, years, often decades into some friendships that are no longer serving you. And you have to ask that question of yourself, is it okay to divest yourself of friendships? And the answer has to be, yeah, it is. And if full divestiture of a friendship is not what you want to do, you can reduce the amount of time that you commit to that. And it sort of makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, when you were 20 or 30 or 40, and now we're assuming that you're 10, 20 years beyond that, do your desires and needs change over time? And of course they do. Your different stages of life, it could be spiritually, physically, health-wise, career-wise. Interests change. And your friends need to change with that to help you grow into that new area. Just because you were parallel for one point in time obviously doesn't make you parallel for the other rest of your time. So the folks who are high performing are the ones who recognize that, and then they sculpt the time that they invest in their friendships into their posse according to areas that they want to grow and contribute to. And the cool thing about posse is, the folks that you have in your posse don't even have to have the same exact interests. One of my best friends is a creative, writes musicals, sings. I don't do any of these things. But when we hang out, we bring out the best in each other to seek new visions in whatever field they're going, whether mine's online education or helping business owners. I can help him with creative ideas for business, for his area. The point is that we're both growth-oriented. So when it comes to choosing, members of your posse, whether it be for career goals, family, diet, fitness, or social contribution, if your current folks are not involved in that, if your current posse is not involved with that, look for people who are, because by hanging with them, you will get doors open to you in those areas that you never would before. If you want to lose weight, and a lot of your friends are out of shape or overweight, Start hanging with some folks who aren't. Go to a recreational fitness class, sign up for a gym and get started, because then you'll start meeting people who are moving in the direction. A lot of the times with Posse, it's not really the destination that is in mind, it's the direction that it's going. So if you want to hang and get healthier, you talk to folks who aren't eating red meat, chicken and fish much anymore, and who are going to the gym. If you want to talk about getting involved in the community, well, get out and start doing some volunteer work so that you can meet other people. Those are often the first links in a chain that you will forge that will take you to all kinds of cool places. Likewise with career, if you're in that 40 and 50 range and you're thinking about what happens after mandatory work for you, start hanging with people who've got some really incredible and cool goals. Theirs may be totally different to you, but because they're exploring, they're going to bring all kinds of value back to you and your thought processes. Without a doubt, the most influential person that I've had the fortune in my life was my father. My father passed away about 10 years ago. A very smart guy. He managed to skip 3 grades of school and graduate high school when he was 15. I didn't have the money to go to college or university. And quite honestly, he and I saw life often from the 2 different ends of a different spectrum. But he was somebody whose comments I just cherished because his thoughts are always thought-provoking. I did agree with him sometime, but more often than not, I didn't agree with it. He had strong family values, but he was not all that ambitious. I have a sense of ambition. I shared family values. I enjoyed some risk. He had different ideas on risk. The point being is by butting heads with him, and that's what we did for 30 or 40 years, we'd butt heads together. I like to think that we brought some different insight into each other because it was done in a respectful way. So if you had to take a look at your posse now, who of those 5 that you hang around with has the gumption to stand up and say, hey, you know what, Scott? You're off the mark on this one. Have you thought about it this way? As opposed to getting yes people who are always saying, yeah, that's great, and not really challenging you on anything. Because unless you have growth, you have decay. Nothing ever stays the same. So you want to have people actually make you think of things in different ways and challenge you to go out and accomplish them. So here you are with your posse of today. How do you go about strengthening its value to you? Well, here's a couple techniques you can try. One is with your current posse, those current 5 that you hang around with, change the conversation. If the conversation is repetitive and routine and ongoing, try interjecting a new topic. Try introducing a new topic of focus, because sometimes it's just you need to be the agents of change and everyone else is going, man, this is boring. Why are we doing it? You can be that bright light for them. Change the focus. Change the focus and change it to something that's positive and growing, because when you do that, if you start talking about possibilities of the future as opposed to the reactionary news of the hyper media, the Trumpisms and all those things that waste so many people's time and conversation these days, you might catch a whole new vibe in that posse. So method number 1 for upgrading the value of your posse is change the conversation. Number 2, if changing the conversation isn't working out exactly the way you want to do it, and sometimes it doesn't, it says that take 66 days to change a habit, so that could be a long-term process. What you can do is change the amount of time that you spend with those people, which will allow you more time to do those other growth-oriented things like go out and networking, doing volunteer work, and connecting new with people. You don't have to stop seeing them entirely, but instead of doing that whole afternoon, that whole evening, it's an hour or 2 once a month until you sort of get a feel for how the new folks are working out for you. And meeting new people is a great way to do that. I went to a conference yesterday, and I was the only one I knew there. Everyone else was totally different demographic and psychographic to me. That's all I'm going to say. But I got out and met some new people that I would not have met otherwise. And I resisted that impulse that when I walked in that I should just bolt, because obviously I wasn't like anybody else there. I hung in there and I met some new people that we've established some cool connections. Number 3, ways to strengthen the value of your posse. You don't all have to be alpha go-getters. You don't have to have all these big, strong leadership types. Some of the best posse people are folks who are quieter and softer spoken. And if everybody's an alpha and go-getter in a posse, then it's always a fight for leadership. And if you wanted to try your leadership wings on there, that becomes really tough to do. So in your posse, you want to have folks who can lead, follow, and collaborate along the way. The fourth way that we'll take a look at strengthening your posse is you don't always have to say a historical yes. Just because you have done something for the last year, 5 years or 10 years, Sunday football, I always pick on that, or, the proverbial wine and book club where it's more wine than book. You don't always have to do that. You don't always have to have the wine. You get to choose. I guess that's what we're saying here. You have, as Stephen Covey would say, the responsibility, the ability to choose your response to say yes or no. Try to go off automatic pilot and think about if it's the best way of serving you. I know I was doing some volunteer work and I'm still doing it, but instead of doing 2 shifts a week, I'm down to 2 hours a week, and I'm doing other volunteer work because the earlier volunteer work, it's not serving me like I used to. I wasn't helping it out as much as I could, and it wasn't helping me out. And strengthening the value of your posse, it will vary over time. So the last piece I'm going to say is, this isn't something you just take a look at today or next week. Just always take a look around who you're hanging with. And if you're the smartest person in the group, change it. You never want to be the smartest person in the group all the time simply because there's nothing to learn. Okay? So get out there and get some people who actually challenge you. So thanks very much for listening today. Last piece in terms of summary, be not only aware of what you are doing with your time, but who you are spending it with. You upgrade the quality of interactions, you upgrade what you bring to your life. Okay? So again, those interactions, the high quality, you get a better life out of it. Next week, what are we talking about? Well, we've just finished the holiday season here. Many of us are carrying a few extra pounds. How do we get to healthy? And it's not going to be the usual way you think. Until next week, have a great one. Talk to you later. This is Scott from Limitless.